We'll be asking one question for all tickets to answer. You'll have 2 minutes to answer the question. Once we finish with the opening question, we'll ask one randomly selected question for each ticket. Tickets will have 3 minutes to answer. Then we will allow for 2 other tickets to rebuttal the question, and then we will allow the original ticket who asked the question a 2-minute response. And we're going to be strictlers about this, just a heads up, you guys. So the questions will have no more than 8 minutes. We will now be asking the first question. At what level do you think it's most impactful to advocate for students' needs? Institutional, campus level, local, state, or federal level? And we will start with the furthest left ticket.
Yeah, so I definitely think that the state level is the most important, because at the end of the day we can make decisions as a university, but we don't really have the jurisdiction to make calls about state laws. And a lot of that has to do with tuition and how much money we are funded, because we're a public institution. So yeah, absolutely the state is the most important level. Can you repeat the question?
At what level do you think it's most impactful to advocate for student needs? Institutional, campus level, local, state, or the federal level?
I agree with Corinne that it would be state level, and that's where we're getting some of our funding from the school, but also more on a local platform. Our biggest concern is hearing student needs and connecting with the student body. Corinne and I chose to run for these positions because we wanted to be a voice for the student body, and that would involve us taking those issues to the state.
So to answer the question, I believe working at the local level and the institutional level would probably be most impactful, because our needs may be specific at WSU Vancouver, and so working with the institution and our local resources can provide us with many different opportunities and can be more impactful, as it can be a grassroots movement.
To say one level is more important than any of the others would be a bit extreme, but most certainly it is good to advocate on the local institutional level in the case of WSUV. Advocating on the state level, of course, would bring in greater funding for our school system as a whole, but for our campus, it's best to focus on the local and institutional level.
Thank you very much. I believe that advocating, the most impactful advocation would be at the institutional level, and that's because as a satellite campus here in Vancouver, we can relay our needs to the institutional level, and if the needs go too high, the institution can advocate at the state level for us. So it's not an either-or decision at this point. It is all-encompassing. Everything is interrelated on a very, everything is interrelated. So the institutional level is going to be the most impactful for advocating for the student body, because it encompasses so many other levels.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I also feel that we need to meet the expectations and demand of the state, obviously, if we want to keep our SNA and all the state needs grants. We have to obviously comply. Many of the concerns that were brought to us while we've been campaigning actually have to be addressed at the state level, and so we're able to tailor some of those concerns down to things that are manageable at the institutional level, and we think that those things are going to be easier to solve, cheaper to solve, and much faster to solve.
Definitely the best way to advocate for students directly would be through the institutional level on this campus, hearing students' concerns and directly work with ASWSUV government.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would also say that it depends on how we're defining impact, because if any of us are elected here, we're here to serve the student body for that year. And so if we're looking at short-term impact, I would say definitely at the institutional level, we want to know what students who we're serving directly need, and that's what's going to determine the level of impact. And on a more long-term level, definitely the state level. I mean, we can set the foundation for things like, we can continue advocating for the state need grant and whatnot, and we can set the foundation for that, But our students, the students that we're serving during that year might not necessarily see that until years after, but we could still advocate for that at the state level.
Thank you all for your responses. We will now move on to the randomly selected questions for each ticket, and we will start with the Jose and Naomi ticket, and your question will be, remember, if you would like to respond to the question, please raise your placard up like we had the senators do, and you will have 1 minute to respond, and we will have 2 tickets to respond to the original ticket to answer, and the original ticket can then respond again. So your question is, what do you think are the key components and fundamental roles of being president and vice president?
So according to, I mean, like on a like literal levels, according to the bylaws, like the president's going to be liaison to the school administration, connect with the students as well. So we're advocating on the students' behalf to the administration. And on a more ground level, as I talked about before, the key component is to be out there listening to the students. Like, this is a democracy. The students have a voice. The students need a voice, and they need to be heard because, the days of exclusivity of student government, they're over. We need to make sure the students have control over this organization, and we're going to ensure that, and that's the key component to what we stand for, and that's really the key component to the job in general.
I would definitely have to agree with you. We're kind of work as liaisons for the school administration with the students, but also we want to be approachable to students so they can come to us with any concerns or questions, and we can definitely find a way to fix the problem or issue that they have at hand.
Kareem, you have 1 minute.
Just to respond to that, I think that listening to the student body is obviously a very vital role, but I think that someone who's ever graced a leadership role knows that sometimes you just have to make decisions based off of your opinion and what you think is going to be the most important thing at that time. So I think that as a presidential nominee, or if we were to be elected, one of the key roles that we would have to undertake is just being able to make decisions that we think is in the best interest of the student body without necessarily talking to every person who has grounds within that, without that concern. Yeah, within that concern. Thank you.
All right, Benjamin.
All the nerves are slowly leaving the body, so it's nice. So I do agree with both of the candidates on we are going to be expected to make decisions, and that's just the way it is. We can talk to as many people as we want to, but at the end of the day, we're making the best decisions based on what we have heard from the students. At the same time, Jose was saying that our door is always open. Well, how many people who really have problems are going to come to us? We're a transit college. That's not going to happen. We need to go to them. We need to go talk to them, find out what those problems are, get as much information as we can so we can then make the best decisions. If we rely on people coming to us, we're just going to get ourselves bogged down in the same old thing that we always get ourselves bogged down in. Thank you.
All right, Jose and Naomi, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you both for your input. So in terms of, I totally agree that we have a role in informing upon the opinion of the students. And we have the experience and we know what's realistic and what's not realistic. And so, we're definitely going to play the role of informing upon that opinion, but I think that the ideas need to come from the students first and foremost. As elected student government members, we are representatives of the people, which means that the students have entrusted us to make good decisions on their behalf, which is true. But we also know that a lot of the student body doesn't vote, and so we have to reach those people who don't vote. And so we have to. That means, I agree with Ben. That means getting out there, because we've been trying to reach people through the same methods, and we're getting the same people each time. So we need to go out there and talk to these students who aren't voting, because they haven't necessarily made their voice heard for us to be their trustees. They haven't necessarily agreed to that. So we have to reach out to them and find out what they need in addition.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and I understand that we have to make decisions. Students may not have the time to come to us. We will be going out to those students, and those students that don't have time on campus, they can also email us, and we can find out a forum online so they can question and voice their concerns whenever it is that they have time.
Thank you for your responses. The next ticket that we will be asking a question is Benjamin and Lindsay, and your question is, how will your administration continue to foster an inclusive culture on campus?
Say that one more time, please.
How will your administration continue to foster an inclusive culture on campus?
You're going to hit me one more time. I got tinnitus.
How will your administration continue to foster an inclusive culture on campus?
All right. Hopefully that didn't cut into my answering time. So I think based off of what our motto is, right? Find your voice and roar. Our administration is going to foster inclusivity amongst everyone by really going out and finding what is important to the students. If you look at the board right in front of us, it's all of the ideas and things that are important to the students that we polled. And it was a very small polling number, but we got so many things that weren't even on our radar that we can now act on. We can find out the feasibility, the realistic, if it's realistic or not, to look at these issues that are at the forefront of a lot of students' minds and find out how to act on them. By not marginalizing anyone, by allowing all ideas to come through. There is no stupid question, right? Or the worst thing that someone can say is no. Bring your ideas to us. Let us, if you see us out there, if we're out there actively talking to people, tell us what your ideas are, and we're going to look into everything to see if and how and when it will be done.
Yeah, just retouching on that, I mean, obviously intellectual diversity is the reason we're here. We want to be challenged. We want to have our thoughts and ideas opposed by other thoughts and ideas. And so I think an inclusive culture here on campus is primarily what's in here as well as what's in here. And so we can share without fear of being thrown off campus or fear of other people shutting down our voices. And so we're really standing for that for everyone on campus.
And you have 1 minute to respond.
Just as Lindsay and Ben have communicated, one of our primary platforms is public discourse and making sure that everybody feels included and that their opinions can be voiced while being respected, no matter how opposing they are. So one of the things that we would like to propose as possibly student leaders is holding forums for people to safely discuss controversial issues with each other, sharing their opposing opinions in a way that could be productive for everyone, where you learn to understand the other side's opinion without judging them and learning more about yourself as well as each other. So that is how our ticket specifically can help to create an inclusive culture on WSUV.
Going off of that, these debates, in order to ensure that they are safe for everyone, they will be moderated to some degree, but for the most part, the students will be allowed to freely debate and discuss matters with each other.
So one thing that Corinne and I have discussed as part of our administration is that we have already established we have a unique group of students on campus. We have unique personalities, unique schedules, and we wanted to have a variety of ways of reaching out to students. We wanted to be accessible and having enough office hours, making ourselves available to students to talk in person, going out and polling, but also one of the ideas we had was having a centrally located suggestion box. Certain personalities just don't like to go take issue with someone in student government, so we wanted to have multiple ways that students could contact us and give us their ideas and concerns so that we could address them in that part of the population that may not typically get involved by coming into the office.
Well said.
Ben and Lindsay, you have 2 minutes to respond.
All right, so one thing I didn't really get to in my first speech was the fact that we went out there, we started off this campaign with one thing in mind, and we went and we talked to all the students, and that made it so our campaign is really fluid, and that's how it's supposed to be, right? We're not going to be able to run on just one platform for the entire year. We have to take into account everything that the students want as they come up. So we have to be very fluid, and I like to use the term react, adapt, and overcome. We're going to react to the students' problems, we're going to adapt to them, we're going to figure out ways to overcome them. I really do like the suggestion box idea. We had one on the ship in the Navy. We'd always say drop a snowflake, because it would usually disappear and nothing would ever happen. So hopefully that could be changed, and that I love the idea of having a suggestion box in addition to having the public forums, having online accesses and resources, maybe revamp CoopSync and take things from there.
Yeah, the cornerstone of our campaign is affordability, accessibility, and accountability. And part of accountability is representing a commuter campus where people come and go throughout the day. People don't live here in dorms. And we believe that really even under the best administrations, there can always be improvements. So we'd like to help do that with you guys.
Thank you both so much. So next for Catherine and Ethan, the question will be, how do you plan to overcome adversity and manage group conflict? You have 3 minutes.
So currently I'm in the IPD program on campus. It's a program in public discourse where I specifically have to learn how to facilitate conversations between people of possibly opposing opinions. I know a few people in the audience and on the panel with me are in that class as well. So I have been in situations where conflict has arisen. I've been a leader in my high school band where there was often drama and conflicting opinions. So the way I handled that was sitting people down and making sure that they understand that each other and why the other is upset. Maybe they're not hearing each other, maybe they're not listening. So resolving things like that I do with calmness and making sure each side understands. And doing that within also student government with maybe other members of student government the same way, the exact same way. I hear them out, understand why we're having the issues that we're having, and solving them logically and not emotionally.
And on the matter of adversity, it's one of those things that in order to overcome that, we have to lead by example. Attending such events that we've previously mentioned and actively participating in them and interacting with the students to best exemplify how you can overcome certain situations through our own life experiences. We can even talk with them in such an open dialogue and transparency.
All right, Benjamin and Lindsay, you have 1 minute.
So, how do we solve adversity and group conflict? Well, the short answer is you can't. Everyone is an individual. Everyone has their own mindset and opinion. That's just human nature. That's the way it is. But we can find out ways to minimize it. And we minimize it by making everyone feel all right to voice what's on their mind in a very respectful manner. Obviously, if it goes beyond into the disrespectful manner, we'll shut them down. And with a decade of military, I've had my fair share of conflicts that I've had to help to resolve. I think that there's not just one way of going about it, and you need to look at what the conflict is to then determine how it can be resolved and go from there.
So it's kind of similar to what Ben said. I agree that people are different. People have diverse personalities and diverse personality types. Approaching the situation always at a logical and calm stance is not going to necessarily help defuse each conflict. And so we need to have a diverse set of conflict management styles. And that's something that, I mean, working with the student body, we've developed those skills, and just throughout our careers, we've developed those skills because people are different and people need different things in order to defuse a conflicting situation. So, anything to add?
I would have to agree with you. It's just diverse conflicts, and they are ways that they can be resolved.
Catherine. 2 minutes to respond.
I agree with both of the points. And have a solution to group conflicts, because the solution would be to come to an understanding. You definitely cannot ever prevent group conflict, but you can come to an understanding over time and at least respect each other's differences and opinions that you're not going to change.
Well said.
Created a monster.
All right, I guess we'll be moving on to the Bree and Corinne ticket. And the question will be, how will you advocate for those whose opinions are different than yours?
That's an excellent question. I think that all opinions won't be the same as ours, obviously, just because needs for students are going to be different. So obviously we'll be advocating for all of the different colleges, all of the different majors. So we will need to get a consensus of what the important things are for that group of students. And so, I mean, all of us belong to very diverse groups, whether it's, you know, you're a single mother, or you're a first-time college student, or you're pursuing a degree in engineering, and there's all these different diverse groups that we belong in. So we, if we were to be elected, would act to make sure that we were able to understand and hear what each of those groups think is important to them, and we will advocate accordingly.
So I agree with Corinne. I would just add that Corinne and I decided to run because we wanted to be a voice for the campus. We both personally felt like we weren't, not that there was anything wrong with the student government before, but we didn't always feel like we were heard or know where we needed to go to be heard necessarily. So the biggest part of our campaign is making ourselves accessible to students. We didn't get into this for personal interests. It's about taking, you know, different people's opinions and bringing them to the Senate and discussing it. It's not about what Corinne and I think, but what we can do collectively for the student body.
Thank you. Catherine, you have 1 minute.
So going off of that, we completely agree that making ourselves accessible to all students, and our ticket, as long as you're a human being on this campus, your voice will be heard, and we will advocate for it. We will hear you out, understand what your concern is, and try to do our best to see what we can do about it. Obviously, with our experience, if I disagree with you personally, that shouldn't affect my job, because my job is to be your voice, not my voice. I can do that through other personal avenues. That's not why I want to be president of ASWSUV. I want to be able to be a conduit to the administration and create opportunities for the student body.
To best represent it, like Catherine said, it means nothing if we agree with you or not. Our job is to be your voice, not to be. We represent the students, not ourselves.
So if you if you can't agree with someone, if you don't agree with someone, and that makes it so you don't act on their idea or their suggestion, you're in the wrong line of work when it comes to student body president or vice president. If someone disagrees with you and you can't look past your pride for 1 second to see if their suggestion or opinion has merit, then move on. That's all I gotta say.
I have experience working with IPD as well, and actually we were talking about a forum on affordable housing, which is not necessarily something that I completely agree with in every sense of the term, but that I was able to go and facilitate these discussions, as well as lobbying up in Olympia for some legislation that I don't necessarily 100% support either. I have experience supporting propositions and legislation which I don't personally find 100% adhering to my beliefs, and so I've been able to push myself in that way.
agree and or in, you have 2 minutes to respond.
It's 2 rebuttals, right?
2, yeah, just 2 rebuttals.
Will you repeat the question one more time?
How will you advocate for those whose opinions are different than yours?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think we all kind of agree in a sense that it doesn't really matter whether we agree with student concerns or not. But one thing I will add to that is we also, as leaders, need to take the concerns that are the biggest in numbers. So if one student comes and has a major concern, we are more than willing to hear them out and chat with them and see if we can come to a collective solution for the problem. But just because one student has a certain concern doesn't mean that necessarily that's a university-wide concern. And as vice president and president, it's our job to act for the student body as a whole. So we need to, obviously do everything that everyone has said, listen and put our opinions aside, but we also need to be able to determine what is worth us, taking up issues with, or pick your battles wisely, I guess you could say.
Well said. I would just want to put out there that personally, I was part of an organization a couple of years ago called Youth with a Mission, and I traveled and lived in 2 different countries with people that I had never met before, that were from all over the world, different cultures, different beliefs, different ways of doing things. So I have a lot of experience in working with people that have opinions that are vastly different than mine, and being able to collectively pull together and do something great.
Awesome, thank you. So we do have a little bit of time left before we start the questions from the audience. So I am going to ask one more question, and each ticket will have a chance. We'll have 2 minutes to respond to the question. We will start with Jose and Naomi. The question is, what do you think should be WCB's top priority over the next year?
Just as we've been emphasizing throughout this whole entire campaign, WSU Vancouver's top priority needs to be listening to the students' concerns. And we do have real plans on addressing this. So we plan on establishing something called the Student Voice and Advocacy Council. We want to invite students from all over the campus community to come into this council and inform upon the decisions that their student government is making. And so that looks like holding those public forums that a lot of their senators talked about, and so I'm really excited for that. That looks like holding those public forums on a monthly basis. And it looks like having students involved and reaching out to students who don't necessarily already get involved. So yeah, our top priority needs to be listening to the concerns of the students, first and foremost.
Definitely, and resources that the campus offers that many students do not know about. Some students realize about these resources up until senior and they don't utilize them properly. So that's something else we really want to focus on. We're planning on asking for ASWSUV as an organization to release all the student resources attached to the syllabus, so that way all students can have access to information about what the resources on campus are available.
I think it's hard to pick just one top priority, and so, like I said, the cornerstone of our campaign has been affordability, accessibility, and accountability. And we think that accountability comes with us and the other members of the student government. We think affordability comes with the administration, as well as working with us as the voice of you. And accessibility, which also falls on everyone that works here at the school, making the school more accessible for everyone, whether that be financially or quite literally physically.
Fantastic. I'm of a mind that utilization and feasibility should be 2 really big things on the forefront of all of our minds. Utilization of all the student resources that we have, all the resources in general, the rooms. I know some rooms go empty. Wow, I know the vet center is like a 12 by 12 jail cell, and we could easily move into somewhere new. I know that the STEM classroom buildings have a shortage, so to speak. So being able to really utilize what we have at our disposal already and feasibility, and that, hey, look, we'd all like to be able to have like personal flying vehicles to get to and from class, but it's not really feasible, right? So let's look at the things that we can change in this next year. We're given a very short timeline, so we have to make the most of it. We can lobby for bigger things that are going to take longer down the road, but for now, we need to look at the feasibility of things that we can fix this year.
In agreement with the previous two tickets, we need to make sure that we are utilizing all the resources that we have at our disposal and making sure that all students are aware of every single resource that they can use. Because like Naomi said, lots of people don't know about them until it's already time them graduating. They're like, oh, I could have done all these things and stuff could have been cheaper for me, or I could have got involved this way. So one of the top priorities should be informing students of this. Two other things that we feel are important, because you can't just have one top priority, is being transparent with all our decisions, and also with how polarizing our current environment is. I feel like it really is important to create safe spaces where people can discuss their ideas with each other safely.
Building off the idea of public discourse being one of WSUV's incoming priorities, part of why it's so important is, for example, when you're in class, much of what teachers have you do is group work. It's through interacting not only with the teacher and it's through interacting not only with the teacher but with other students that you become best educated and enriched. It's a multi-part process. And through public discourse, where we have people interacting with each other, we can best enrich their education and their personal capabilities later on in life.
So I obviously agree, as I'm sure many people do, with all of the other tickets. But for us personally, if we were to be elected, our number one priority would be partnerships and growth. We can listen to students, and students have expressed their wants and needs for growth of the university. And by partnerships, we mean coffee shops on campus, food on campus, through other companies that will make us more revenue, obviously, and help them grow. We also really like the idea of furnished apartments for students. I think that everyone says, all of these goals are unattainable, but that's because they haven't elected someone into leadership yet that has made them attainable. And I feel like we definitely are go-getters and will make the steps necessary to move forward with those. We also want to bring healthcare to campus, and that can be done through partnerships as well. And then partnerships with recreation. All of these four things will help grow revenue and also improve student life.
I think Corinne gave a really good explanation there of some of the details of what we would want to do, but the big picture is we want to see larger campus, resources here on our smaller campus. I mean, we're paying for it, why aren't we using it? What's that?
No, I said bless you. I'm sorry, LCD.
We're paying the same amount in tuition as students at Pullman. Why aren't we accessing all the same resources that they have? Why don't we have the same resources on campus, or coffee or food, or our cafeteria doesn't even have adequate seating? What is this? We just want to see everyone get the most out of their tuition, their education, and their time here at WSUV.
We are going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll get to the audience questions.